I'm Mrs. Hebert, and I'm going to tell you about some acrylic painting techniques today. These same techniques can be used with watercolor paint, tempera paint, or any variety of paint. And we're using acrylic today. I'm going to use a purple. You can use any color that you like. I have a variety of paintbrushes. I have newspaper underneath, and I have water set up to use. I'm able to use a little bit of water or a lot of water to control the consistency of my paint. First, I'm going to try various brush marks. What can I do with different kinds of paintbrushes? And I'm just going to get a feel for adding a little bit more water and seeing how the paint flows, and maybe adding a little bit less water and see what the paint looks like there. If I use different brushes, I'm going to get thicker marks or different marks. If I have a little bit more water, I'm going to have the paint flowing more than it did there. And if I use a bigger brush, I'm going to have more water with a bigger brush. I'm going to have a mark that looks kind of like that. Actually, one of the techniques that I wanted to teach you today is called dry brush, and you see it happening right here and right here. So if you have paint and just enough paint on a brush that's relatively dry, and you drag it across your page, you can get a really interesting texture. Experiment with that and see what that looks like depending on how much water you have, a little bit more water or a little bit less. And you can think of a lot of places where adding a texture like that might really be interesting. Here I have too much water, so that's not really looking like a... So if I have too much water, I can dab on the newspaper or I can dab on the paintbrush and see, trying again, still too much water. There, now I'm getting more of a dry brush look with this shape of paintbrush. We'll wash on this whole square, and then when it's dry, we're going to come back with another layer over the top of it, and that will be a glaze. I'm going to ask you guys to use a glaze of a warm color and a cool glaze, because one way that artists mix color is by layering translucent layers of paint. So here goes for the wash. Because I'm covering a big area right here, I'm going to choose a big paintbrush. And I'm going to use a good amount of water and cover my whole square. And nice and even. I'm going back over this. I'm going to go back and demonstrate how to do a glaze. A cool color. What would be a cool color, guys?
Blue.
Blue, green, purple. I already have purple there, so I'm actually going to just use this blue. And I need to, basically for a glaze, do another wash and layer it over the top. And I don't want those lines showing, so I'm just going to blend them out. So that's my cool color glaze. What would a warm color be?
Yellow.
All right, so you guys know your colors. I'm going to take a yellow. A yellow glaze can be a really effective way to put on a highlight or to make it look like there's sun shining. And in order to use yellow, I'm going to make sure my brush is really clean so I can get a nice glaze there. Again, I'm basically doing a wash, so I want to have a lot of water, and then my warm color glaze is going to go right over the top of the violet there. And you see the purple shining through. So it's just another way to mix colors. Layer thick paint. My yellow is mostly dry, but not quite, so I'm going to put on a thick layer, and I'm not going to go back and forth too much so that I can, because if I do, it'll mix my colors. Then I'm going to use a paintbrush, or I could even use my fingernail to scratch in, And under that purple, then you can really see the yellow coming through. Sgraffito is actually from the Italian verb to scratch, and it can be a great technique to utilize in a lot of different situations. For a wet and wet technique, what happens if the paper's already wet when you add paint to it? Instead of getting, like when we practiced our brush marks, crisp edges, you get the paint blending, and you can mix different colors into that. You get a wet on wet technique that can really create some interesting surface texture in your pieces. Another great technique is a wax resist. So oil and water do not mix. So oil pastel or crayon work really well for this. So if you make a mark in oil pastel or crayon and you paint over it, what do you think will happen? Who knows?
It won't go over the oil pastel.
Right. So if I use a wash of purple in this case, the oil pastel resists being covered because that's a bunch of different painting techniques to get you started. And I can't wait to see how you combine them and use them in your work.